years as an executive career and executive coach, facilitator, and speaker, has inspired people to engage in working that is fulfilling, meaningful, and satisfying. She provides a variety of services to individual clients and businesses in a range of sectors, industries, including executive career coaching, group facilitation, training, and speaking. This work focuses primarily on workplace communication, leadership strategies, and team development. Tammy hosts a podcast, which is amazing, Work from the Inside Out, which she showcases inspiring stories and practical lessons of people who had transitioned to more satisfying and meaningful work. And I must tell you that I got to Tammy through networking, because we're trying to always bring you new speakers that aren't on what I call the circuit. And I reached out to a colleague of mine at JVS in Boston and said, who do you know? And she recommended Tammy and next week's speaker, who was more than generous to volunteer her time to do this for us. So I'm very excited to hear what she has to say. And Tammy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, Meryl, thank you so much. And I will say, even though I live in Boston, I'm originally from the greater Metro New York area. So I feel like I'm already at home with all of you. I am going to share my screen, and we'll start with a little PowerPoint. People can keep introducing themselves in the chat. I'm also going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you to put your answers in the chat. All right, can everybody see the screen? So you don't have, obviously I can't ask everyone to say yes if we've got you all muted, but I guess if you can't, oh, thank you, Rob. All right, very good. All right, we're gonna get right into it. So before I get to the first question for you, I want to tell you why I believe networking is not just about finding a job. A lot of people, they network, they get a job, and then they let a lot of it go. I'm guessing that many of you have had that experience. The kind of networking that people need to do today, it's all about relationships. And it's important to keep a lot of those relationships going, regardless of whether you're working or not. So that's why I speak about it in that context. Let's start with a little poll. I'm going to ask you to, in the chat, give me your answer to this question. How do you feel about networking? Do you love it? Are you uncomfortable with it, but you want to get better at it? Or would you rather have a root canal? Okay, I see a lot of B's, some A's. Let's see what we got here. A few C's. I got an AB. All right. I like the clarification. I'm not sure if I love it, but I enjoy it. Some people really enjoy it very much. Faye says it's a qualified A. What do you mean by that, Faye, if you're willing to unmute and tell us?
So I've had a lot of success in my professional life networking. It happens when I am confident about what I'm seeking. Mm-hmm. And I'm 100% sure that that is what's stopping me up, that I'm no longer confident, okay, that I want to do what I used to do.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. That's an important point. Very important point. And I also want to say that, it'd be interesting to, and you can add this to the chat if you'd like, what is your definition of networking? What does that mean to you? So anybody who wants to add that to the chat, feel free. Building relationships, connecting, extending oneself to others. Great. Providing value to someone. Let's see what else we have here. Mutually beneficial relationships. That's right. Being in contact with people, broadening your knowledge of industries. Oh, I love hearing that. Supporting our fellow job seekers. Establishing trust, caring for one another. Good, 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 good. Okay. So what I'm loving about your answers, looking to give before you get. Yes. There you go, Norm. So what's really important about your answers is that many of you clearly really get it. That I think that the more traditional view of what networking is you just call people up or email them and ask them if they'd be willing to talk with you a little bit about your job search. And the fact of the matter is that's the last thing you should be thinking about, or not the last, but definitely not the first thing you should be thinking about. So it is a reciprocal process. It's a process of gathering information, getting information, and it is also a process where you do want to give something back to somebody. I was talking to a client of mine the other day who's a very, very successful young woman, or young for me at least, in her late 20s. And, you know, she said, well, what do I have to give? How can I give anybody anything? And I said, you don't have to give people something. Really, all you need to do is go into a conversation with somebody and ask them about themselves. Just try to learn as much as you can about them. That's going to help you. But people appreciate that you're taking an interest in them and that you're not just there to, quote, air quote, pick their brain. Now, there's an expression I recommend that people never use. Don't pick anyone's brains. People don't like to have their brains picked. So let's move along here. Oh, that's nice. Offering to proofread things for people. So there are things you can pay it forward. And also keep in mind that as you go forward, those same people you're talking to, there's a good likelihood they may be knocking on your door at some point as well. So our objectives for today are to talk about how to engage people genuinely to build those productive connections. So I think of networking and building connections as not just a one-shot deal where you talk to someone once. Hopefully you are beginning a relationship. And we'll talk about how to access and expand your networks. And then we're also going to do some networking today. And the agenda is, I want to share with you 4 keys to successful networking. These are 4 keys to successful networking, according to me. As you heard Meryl mention, I've been coaching people on their careers for more than 20 years. And when I first started coaching, a friend of mine said to me, "Oh, this is a great job for you." She said, "Because you love to tell people what to do with their lives." And I thought that was kind of funny. But it's not because I love to tell people what to do, but I care very much about what people are doing with their lives. Because when you think about how many hours out of our adult lives we spend at work, it's a lot of our waking hours. We spend more time at work than we do with our families, than we do sleeping or taking care of the other things that we consider to be important in our lives. And so if we're not happy at work, then that's something worth working on. Now, of course, today we're talking about, networking in an effort to find that next role. So I understand that some of you may not be feeling happy right now because you don't even have a job to be happy in. but we're going to talk about that as well. I also want to spend a little time talking to the introverts and the extroverts in the group. Now, some of us may be somewhere in the middle. We may be more like centroverts or ambiverts, as some people call them. But I think that there are some nuances and things to be aware of. It's not that introverts don't like to network, but they're going to want to do it differently. So,
Tammy, you just got muted.
I saw that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. There are a few people who'd like to do that. Oops. I went to the wrong slide now. Okay. We're also going to talk about some communication skills and tools. And then we will also, I've got the chat box in front of my slide here. I've got to move things around on my screen. We're also going to talk about various networking opportunities. Maybe there's a way in which you can network that you haven't thought of before. I'm hoping that by the end of this session today, that you will have something a little new or a little different to think about. Perhaps it may not be totally new to you, but something you haven't thought about in a while. So I'm expecting that there will be things we talk about today that you've heard over and over and over again if you've been to a bunch of these sessions. At the same time, I invite you to keep an open mind and to think about what might you do a little differently, especially if you feel that some of the things that you're doing now aren't working well. So here are my 4 keys to successful networking. Your state of mind. That's a big, big part of how we approach networking. And we had a great example of that a few minutes ago. When I'm feeling confident, I feel better about my networking. That's a state of mind. So we're going to talk about your state of mind and what gets in the way of you fully engaging in networking activities. And also what serves you well in networking activities. We're going to talk about the variety of resources that are available to you to serve your networking efforts. We're also going to talk about what to say. A lot of people I work with, even people who have, are very seasoned networkers or even seasoned professionals, have said, I just don't know what to say in this particular case. So we're gonna talk about that. We're going to talk about how maybe you don't need to worry too much about what to say, but how you show up. And then we're going to talk a little bit about following up and following through, because that's a piece that sometimes gets put aside and doesn't happen as readily, and it's actually just as essential to networking. So I'm sure many of you have heard the expression, your mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So one of the most important things you can do when you are reaching out to somebody to connect with them, you're hoping somebody will be able to help you. You're going to, I know many of us haven't gone to a lot of in-person events lately, but you might be showing up to events on Zoom and things like that. Staying open and curious, and more curious than anything, really just staying curious, wondering, gee, I wonder what that person did before they did the job that they just left, or I wonder where they went to school, or I wonder what they're hoping to do next. Just be full of curiosity. The more you stay in a place of curiosity, the more information you will get. The more information you have, the better your odds are of moving forward. And when you show up as curious, people are attracted to that. They like curious people. Now there's a difference between being curious and nosy, right? I'm talking about just general curiosity here. The other part of your state of mind that's also equally as important as being open and curious is dealing with your committee. So we all have a committee. Some of us have bigger committees than others, but the committee is those voices inside our heads. The one that says, I'm not enough of this, I'm too much of that, I don't know. That's when all your confidence is lower, you start questioning yourself. It also could be those somewhat insidious messages that have been sort of running through your mind most of your life. Whether it's some well-intentioned adult who told you, oh, you're really not good at math, you should really, become an English teacher, or you're really good at science, you should become a doctor. So these are all voices in our heads. They're they can be very subtle. They can run through our heads to the extent that we don't even know that they're running us, and they run our behavior. So I'm too old. Maybe I'm not wearing the right thing to the interview. How will they look at me? All those things that people wonder about. And it's a very rare person that I meet who doesn't have a committee. So I think it's very important for you to be aware of all those messages that have run through your head, almost on autopilot, through your head, that really take you to places you don't need to go. So notice when those show up. They will keep showing up. You can't just sort of dismiss them right away, but start to really notice when they show up, because they can be very subtle. And when they do show up, just notice it. Don't judge it. Don't beat yourself up over it, and just say, okay, that's what's getting in the way of me stepping into being my best self in this moment. So does that make sense to everyone? All right, I got a thumbs up. Good. All right, very good. So thank you. So the other thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, and a lot of the things I'm talking about with state of mind are things that are just become so deeply ingrained in us. Like, especially in the US, asking for help is a sign of weakness. I mean, how many of us were ever raised and being told, oh, you should always ask for help. You should just always ask for help. So keep in mind, asking for help is actually a strength. Asking for help doesn't mean you're helpless. It just means you're asking for information, or maybe you're asking for help to solve a problem. Maybe you're asking for help to reach out to somebody that you'd like to speak with. I mean, help can look like a lot of different things. Or as I like to say, help is not really a 4-letter word. Gratitude, another big part of your state of mind. Really walk through your days as much as possible being grateful. Being grateful for being able to come on a session like this, for being able to network with, I mean, how many, I'm trying to see how many people do we have on the call right now. I can't see it. So let's see. 97. You have 97 opportunities to meet people who are all here because they either care about what they're doing next or they want to help you. So there's a lot that we can be grateful for. When we stay in a place of gratitude, there are certain things that get fired off in our brains, and it actually gives us energy and motivation. So another place to keep looking. One way that I suggest people stay in a place of gratitude is, before you go to sleep at night, write down 3 good things. Just 3 good things. It could be, I like what I had for dinner tonight. I like the fact that I'm tired enough now to fall asleep. It could be anything, just 3 good things. If you make that a habit, you will notice that things might go a little more easily, a little more smoothly for you. So there are little practices and little things that you can do to really build up your state of mind to keep going. So another piece of state of mind is that I think is important for us to remember, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed or that there's just a lot on our plates. You're one person. You're just one person. You're looking for probably one job or one project. So you're one person. Take it one step at a time, the power of one. Most things that get accomplished and get accomplished successfully are done in small steps, not big leaps. You know, you've probably heard people say, oh yeah, I was an overnight success, 10 years in the making. You know, people make progress by putting one foot in front of the other, not by taking giant leaps. And then the other piece of this that I want to talk about are defining moments. So many of you have probably had a moment in your life, probably more than one, where if you hadn't taken a right turn or a left turn that day, you may or may not have come across something that was helpful to you. Or if you know, for example, I think about the way I met my husband. I happened to be in a bagel shop one day. This was over 30 years ago. And I saw a little magazine sitting on the windowsill at the bagel shop, and it said Jewish singles. And I thought, well, that looks interesting. I wasn't really thinking seriously about trying to meet someone yet, but I thought, well, I'll pick it up and take it home and, you know, just see what it says. I took it home. I opened it up. I saw these were personal ads, for those of us who remember what those are. And there you go. I read his personal ad. I answered it. And here we are 30 plus years later. So that's a defining moment. If I had not gone into that bagel shop at that moment and picked up that magazine and read it and then decided to answer his personal ad, who knows? We don't. But I would have been surprised if I would have met him any other way. So that's what I mean by defining moments. Those quick little moments that if you had just looked in one direction or not the other, and something changed that really made an impact on your life. The reason why I bring this up, you may wonder, is because that's what networking is all about. Every person you touch, every person that you reach out to, that you connect with, every piece of information, every article you read, even when you're too tired, you say, oh, I don't want to read another thing. You never know when that one move you make could be that defining moment that gets you to the next place you want to go. So whenever you tell yourself, oh, that's not going to work, or, you know, I've talked to enough people today. Now, I'm not saying don't take a break, but notice when you stop yourself from something where it could be just another opportunity to learn something new, meet a new person. Because, you know, for every new person you meet, you're not just meeting them. You could potentially be meeting everybody else they know. And I don't know if you know this, but most people who find their next job, they find it through a third, fourth, or fifth degree connection. It's usually not a warm connection. So the more that you allow yourself to stay open and curious, that state of mind, and step into situations, even if they make you a little uncomfortable, you never know what could be on the other side of that defining moment. And you'll be really glad you did, both for stepping over or around something that might have left you a little uncomfortable or fearful. You'll feel good about having taken the chance, but also you may feel really good if it turns out that that person connects you with an opportunity. So think about some of the defining moments in your life. Take yourself back there for a moment. Let yourself almost be in that moment, because I think we forget what those moments are like. And I'm going to ask you, we're going to put you in breakout groups now. Let's see how many people we have. We'll probably put you in breakout groups of 3 to 4 people each. And you're going to, you might want to take down a couple of notes here. You want to introduce yourselves in your smaller groups. And if you're comfortable, share one of your defining moments. It doesn't have to be about a job. It could be about anything. Just put yourself in that moment and maybe let yourself ponder a little bit. What would have been different if that had not occurred? Just to speculate a little bit. And then with timing allowing, share one of your biggest challenges in networking. Maybe it's very situational. It might be very specific, or it might be something very general. And talk amongst yourselves. Offer each other some ideas around those challenges. That's what we're here to do.
Tammy, how much time are we giving them?
We are, let me see how we're doing on time.
It's 10:36.
Okay. We're going to give you 10 minutes.
Terrific. So everyone make sure you unmute yourselves and you start your videos up, and then Tammy's going to put us all into rooms and we're going to get to network.
Okay. So there.
Hi. Hello.
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 Okay, we got to get into our rooms before everyone starts to talk.
Okay.
Row of 90 is fine.
Yeah, right. A group of 90.
Let's see.
Are we in a breakout room?
Okay, 88.
I guess the people who didn't want to be seen are dropping off. It's okay.
Or putting on lipstick.
Oh, what a good idea.
We still have 88 people. All right, let's go for it now. I'll give you a 2-minute warning when you need to wrap up your conversations.
Terrific. Okay, let's go.
All right.
most recently
2021.
GE Aviation.
Are people speaking? Because I don't hear anything.
We're back. We're back.
We're back.
We're back.
Welcome back, everybody.
Tammy, do you want everybody to mute themselves now? Or
I will mute everybody.
Okay, good.
As much as I hate to do that, I'm going to do it.
That was great.
Oh, good.
I hope everybody else thought it was great too.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, we'll find out in the chat, right? Okay. I'm going to move us along because time is flying by here. So I hope that was helpful to you. I hope you met some people you didn't know already. As you've seen in the chat, there's lots of people who've introduced themselves. To make sure that you download the chat so you have all that information. All you have to do is click on that little box in the lower right corner with the 3 little dots. At least that's how it looks on an Apple computer. It might be a little different on a PC. And make sure that you connect with people. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about introverts. So in the chat, if you think you're an introvert, just say yes in the chat.
Oh my God, everybody's saying yes.
All right. Thank you for telling me, because for some reason I don't have the, let me see, where's the chat? Where do I have the chat? Oh, here we go. Yes, yes, yes. When it comes to networking, in the middle. All right. Situational, introvert, extrovert. Yes. So this is true. So, so here's the thing about introverts. If you didn't know this already, introverts are social people. They're not social people. Some people are perhaps, an extreme introvert might be somebody who's extremely shy and doesn't reach out a whole lot. I'm curious if you can tell me of these well-known people on the screen. Do you know which of these people are introverts?
I wouldn't be surprised.
All right. So a bunch of you saw right through me. Kevin, Dean, Josh, and Vincent, Kathleen, you are correct. Ding, 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 ding. You got it right. Yes, Ted. So yes, they are all introverts. They are all.
It really didn't surprise me though with Lady Gaga and Elton John. The others, I just assumed they were all introverts because you put that up there.
You saw right through me, Ted. All right. Well,
no, but Lady Gaga, I know her history, and Elton John has had just such a rough life. So
yeah. Well, being an introvert or an extrovert is usually something that you are, probably from birth onward. But the thing is, we have this typical idea of what an introvert is, that it's somebody who might be shy or not that sociable or whatever. Not true. Not true at all. In fact, both my husband and daughter are introverts, and they're very social people. They got stuck with me. I'm clearly more of an extrovert, but, and if you've done your Myers-Briggs, you'll know that, that Johnny Carson was a very famous introvert. So here's the thing about introverts, and I am, putting this in very broad terms, but as a rule, and we're all on a scale, some of us are more extreme than others. I would say I'm more in the middle. I like my alone time, but I'm definitely, somebody who gets energy when I'm around other people. Whereas an introvert, might go to a conference or a large event, and they might be fine, but then at some point they've got to go take a break and have some alone time to refuel. So being an introvert or an extrovert isn't necessarily always exhibited in your behavior. It could just be how you get energized, how you get refueled, what excites you. So these are just, what I'm offering here are just a few examples of things that introverts are really strong at. They're generally very, very good listeners. They're really good at things like research and preparation and planning. That's not true for everyone, but they tend to take their time with a more thoughtful process rather than just jumping into something. They are far more interested in a conversation of substance than small talk. And in fact, if you're a real extreme introvert, small talk can make you almost break out in a rash. And one of the key things about introverts that I tell them all the time is plan for downtime. So I had a client who was going to a big conference, and he was complaining to me that he goes to these conferences and they just wipe him out. He just gets so exhausted that he almost doesn't get as much out of it as he'd like to. And so I suggested that he take some time, like at lunchtime. Maybe don't go sit and have lunch with people. Go for a run or go sit outside by yourself for a while. It never occurred to him to just take a little time for himself. I mean, how many of us forget to take time for ourselves, right? Even extroverts. And so he did that the next time he went to a big conference, and he said it made all the difference in the world. It made all the difference in the world for him, and he got so much more. So, this message on this slide is about introverts, but it's really to everyone. Play to your strengths, whatever they are. I think for introverts, they probably appreciate more one-on-one types of networking than going to big groups. I know extroverts who hate going to big groups. I'm one of them. I know how to conduct myself in those situations, but if I have the option to just sit with a few people or one person, I'm much more of a connector in that way than going to a big event and, working a room. So you have to know yourself, and you have to know how to really play to your strengths and also find ways to refuel yourself. So in terms of accessing your resources, this is another one of the 4 keys. There are a ton of resources available to you for networking. I think when I generally talk to people about networking initially, the first thing they talk to me about is who they know in their own industry or their own sort of functional professional group. And that's true. That's definitely your network. But there are so many other ways to access resources, get the information you need, and use that information to propel your networking efforts. So yes, not just professional connections, but personal connections. I can't begin to tell you how many clients I've had who don't even tell their next door neighbors they might be looking for their next opportunity. You don't have to say, I lost my job or I'm looking for a job. You don't have to say anything about that if you're feeling a little reticent about it. You could just say, I'm in the process of looking for my next opportunity. You don't have to say anything more than that. And then, hey, do you know anybody who works in this industry or that industry? I'm looking, or do you know anyone who works for this company or that company? I'm hoping to talk to somebody who works there. I just want to kind of get the lay of the land. So people often forget to access their personal connections. And I don't mean just your personal friends. I mean neighbors. It could even be a cousin who lives halfway across the country. We live in a world now where just because you live in one place doesn't mean you don't know people all over the place. Or, many of you are in the sort of, New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. How many employers have locations all over the country or in other places? You might have a relative that you haven't talked to in a while who you might want to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm looking for my next thing. I just thought I'd tell you that that's what I'm up to. I think people forget to tell some of the more obvious people in their lives what's going on or to network with them. And then groups and associations. And what I mean by that is associations is pretty straightforward. We're talking about, you know, things like, you know, professional associations and trade groups. Groups, I see someone wrote here their alma mater. Yeah, so alumni groups. If you think about all the groups that you have on LinkedIn, there are a ton of groups that you could be in on LinkedIn, but don't just join a group, be active in a group, interact. You know, there are meetup groups. Now, a lot of those are virtual for now, but there are so many different ways to join with people, or even, you know, your church, your synagogue, other, you know, community-based organizations. I've seen a lot of people start doing some volunteer work or serve on a board of directors, and they end up meeting all kinds of other people through those connections. So sometimes you start with a connection that isn't a professional connection, but then you get to talking and you find out, oh, you know, I've seen lots of networking go on the soccer field when parents are watching their kids play soccer, for example. So some of those things also turn into what I would call situational resources, right? So I've gotten clients that way, where I'll be at a party and somebody will ask me what I do, or someone across the room even overhears what I'm talking about. I guess I have a loud voice. And I've had this happen more than once. And they'll say, I need to talk to you. I literally have had that happen more than once when someone overhears me. I've had it happen in Starbucks. So situational, think about it. You could be online in the grocery store, although these days we're standing 6 feet apart. So maybe you're not having those kinds of conversations in the grocery store, but there are lots of situations we end up in that aren't necessarily networking situations, that actually the conversation can go in a direction where you find out something about somebody. And it turns out to be, you know, one of those defining moments. Social media, that's a whole nother class. You know, LinkedIn, I will say one thing about LinkedIn. Don't just build your network on LinkedIn and build a good profile. Be active on LinkedIn. Make comments, put up posts. Don't just like other people's things. If you really want to be found, that's what you need to do on LinkedIn. I'm not going to say more about it here because we could go on about that for hours. And I think, you know, newspapers, blogs, trade publications, podcasts, and I'm going to add one more thing to that. These are all informational resources that, you know, you might read an article about somebody, or you might read an article by somebody and say, oh, I want to talk to that person who wrote that article. You know, people who write, I do some writing. I love it when people reach out to me after reading one of my articles. The other thing I want to mention, though, is that there are very specific publications that you might subscribe to. Listening to podcasts is great. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, and I know, your public library. Public libraries are a resource that a lot of people overlook. Reference librarians are very talented, very resourceful, and creative people. So if you're trying to get industry information about certain types of companies, or get a list of companies in your area that do certain types of things, sometimes in some libraries you can call them up and they will do the research and provide you with a list. I know that here in the Boston area, I don't live right in Boston proper, but I have called and reached out to some of the resources at the Boston Public Library, and I've gotten huge lists of companies for clients. So recently, a client of mine wanted to know what major financial services companies had a Boston-based office. I got this spreadsheet that the library sent me with so much valuable information on it for my client for free. Enormously helpful. Okay, so, and I see people are putting in the chat box, name a resource you plan to access in 2021. So I see alumni associations, that's great. All kind, personal productivity club. So, you know, a lot of people will also form their own little networks, their own little job seeker groups. Some people will join a mastermind group. I run mastermind groups for job seekers. That kind of thing is where you're really sharing information, but you're also getting the kind of support. And, you know, I'll say this too. I don't think I say this anywhere here in the PowerPoint. Don't do this alone. I know you're here today and that's great, but don't spend the rest of your time alone on this. The more that you are in touch with people, or even have certain people that become your job search, you know, your job search buddy or your check-in partner, it makes all the difference in the world. It helps you stay on track. It keeps you motivated, and you realize you're not alone. You're not the only one dealing with all the ins and outs of a job search. This is part of the reciprocity part of networking. I really believe that networking is really a research project. You're trying to get information. The more information you get, the better off you'll be. I believe information is power. So as Dale Carnegie said, be interested, not interesting. So when you start a conversation with somebody, if you're networking with them or you think you're networking with them, learn about them, ask about them, find out not just what do they do today, how did they get there? Sometimes when you find out about how somebody else got their job, it gives you some ideas about things you can do in your own job search. And people appreciate you taking an interest in them. So make sure that you're listening, not just for what they say, but also how they say it, a little bit about what you think they're feeling. Not that you're going to put words in their mouth, but you might say, they might tell you, oh, well, I went through a layoff. Oh, that must have been difficult. Was it difficult for you? You know, you can ask them questions about their own experience, not just what they did, but more about, well, oh, well, how did you handle it when that happened? Or what are some of the things that are coming up for you? So not just what happened in the past, but maybe ask them, what are you looking forward to? And they will remember you because of the kinds of questions that you asked. They will remember you based on your interest in them. Maybe not even exactly what you talked about, but they will remember that about you. And the next time you reach out to them, they're going to be very willing to listen to what you have to say because they feel like you see them. And you all know what that feels like when you feel seen and understood. It makes a big, big, big difference. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because I'm guessing that many of you have already created or have been through trainings where you've created an elevator speech or elevator pitch. I will be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of elevator pitches. I know that probably everyone else promotes them. But I think that they come off sounding almost robotic sometimes. I'm more of a fan of the professional branding statement. It's similar, but it's a little different. It feels a little more natural. And I find that it gives you a chance to highlight your strengths and your impact. I find elevator pitches often talk about who you are and what you do, but it doesn't always go far enough to say who you are and the value you offer. And that's my opinion. I'm not here to argue about it, but I've never been a huge fan of the elevator pitch the way it's been described, but at the same time, I know that they are helpful to people. And I think one of the best follow-up comments that can come after either one of these kinds of statements is to talk about something you've seen, talk about your experience. What I have seen is to show that you have credibility, to show that, you know, here's something in my experience that I can reflect on, share with you, and let you know that I'm not just sort of giving you a pitch, but I'm also talking from my own experience. I wanted to touch quickly on conversation starters, and this is probably more applicable when you're in a live event. And you will get a copy of these slides if you want them. But these are some of the good opening kinds of lines that you can use when you meet someone, especially if you're feeling awkward in a group event. You know, what drew you to this session? How did you hear about this? What's been a highlight of your day today? So just asking, again, being interested, not interesting. So here's a basic formula for an elevator speech, elevator pitch. I'm not against I know I sounded like I was totally against them. I'm not totally against them. I just think that there's a way that might even work a little better. Again, I don't usually hide my opinion. So I'm going to go on here and tell you quickly about the professional branding statement, and you're going to have a chance to try to work on your own a little bit. So a professional branding statement is a succinct sentence that holds your listener's attention, and it differentiates you, but it doesn't have to explain everything about you. What it does, it's a conversation starter of a sort. So this is how it goes. You would state something along the lines of what you do, your company, or what you've done in the past. What is a single problem that you solve better than anyone else you know? And how can you deliver value? I'm going to show you an example. So here we have Homer Simpson. He's a nuclear engineer. He's an expert in controlling power plants, maximizing safe and low-cost power capacity. So you have an idea of what he is, what his expertise is, and how he provides value. So we're going to go back into breakout groups.
1 second, Tammy.
I know we're running out of time.
No, I think it's great. And I really want to go back in the breakout rooms, but I'm a little nervous about people disappearing. So how about if you unshare this? Well, actually, you don't have to unshare the screen. Maybe we'll stop and do the evaluations now, and then we can not feel rushed through the breakout rooms, which is what I would like to do.
Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can
right.
I can stop sharing for a moment.
No, I don't think I have to. I'm just going to put it in the chat, so you can leave it shared anyway. So
Okay.
what I'm going to put in the chat is the 1 second. Let me just do this. All right. I just put in the chat room a form, which is a link to a Google Doc for our evaluations. We are going to go into breakout rooms, and then we're going to have plenty of time for question and answers afterwards. So please don't leave, but we really, really, really need this information, both so that we can help the speaker improve their presentation, so that we can know what to do next, and so that we can tell our funders how much this is helping people. So take 3 minutes. Copy and paste that or click on it. Lately, some people haven't been filling it out during the 3 minutes we give you. So please, 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 it's really important. It enables us to continue to do these programs for free. And I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to time it. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Fill it out, fill out the answers. Don't skip on anything. Go.
Wait, where's the link?
It's in the
It's in the
chat room. It's in the chat room.
In the chat room?
Yep. I just put it in there. Did it go anywhere?
It's right there.
It's in the chat. You
Yeah,
just have to
right there
look
from
to the
me, from
bottom.
Merrill County to everyone.
Can you,
HTTPS
Merle, can you send it again?
I'll do it
I
right
don't
now.
see it in my chat.
There it goes. Now it's
There
at
it
the
goes.
bottom.
Now I have it. Thank you.
Got buried quickly. So it's 11:12. We'll go to 11:15. Go ahead. Thank you so much.
Where is it?
Have another minute and a half. Okay, about another 45 seconds. Okay, Tammy, take over, send us off to rooms so we can talk.
Okay, here you go.
Tammy, I got put in a room with somebody who walked away.
What?
It was just me and one other person. She must have been on mute and then all of a sudden dropped out. So
Oh,
I
okay.
was by myself. I just wanted to come
Oh
back.
my God, that's so weird. All right, I'm gonna put you in another room.
Don't worry about it. You know, I actually have done this part of your presentation before with,
Oh, I'm sure most people have.
yeah, I've done this and I don't want to, you know, I'm sure people are getting ready to call it.
Well, they have about 4 more minutes, so.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just wait it.
Okay.
I actually had gone, I don't know if you know who Marty Latman is.
Who?
Marty Latman.
Mm-mm.
He's also a coach, but he had done a presentation just on elevator pitches,
Mhm.
and these main questions that you asked were all part of it. So I've kind of gone through this already.
Right. No, I know it, and that's fine. I assume that most people who come to these have already been through this. I'll just tell you that the additional question I asked people to work on was, you know, if you share your statement or your pitch, whatever, with the group, then let other members of the group ask you kind of reflective questions, you know, have the practice of somebody responding to it and how you might respond to it and getting feedback on that. Because, you know, our statements change over time based on
Oh yeah,
the way they're received. And honestly, I mean, I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, I'm self-employed. I'm always looking for my next job.
right.
So, you know, people say, well, what do you do? Or, you know, and I'm like, I still find myself saying, oh, I help people to get happier at work, but that doesn't really tell them what I do because, but it does tell them what I'm about. And then they can say, oh, well, how do you do that? You know? So sometimes it's good to, that's why I'm not a huge believer in these sort of like, I'm this, and I've been in rooms where people rattle off their elevator pitch almost as if they're asleep while they're doing it. And it's sort of like, no, I that's nice that you're an engineer. Now tell me what matters to you, because, you know, there are a million engineers out there. I can't help you knowing you're an engineer. I need to know, you know, other things, even in a quick minute. That's just me though. I'm
Right. Yeah, no, I understand. But it was just like, I'm sitting here waiting, thinking this person's going to come back. And then they literally disconnected.
Oh, they did? Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, so I was by myself.
I
So
was
I don't-
checking all the rooms to be sure that the rooms had at least 2 people in them. So
Yeah, we were only
I
two
see.
people.
I see what room you were in now. It's 0. Okay.
That's okay. You know what? The only thing is when I got out, realizing I was by myself,
Yeah.
I literally had to get out and go back into the meeting.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. Where are you based?
I live in Livingston, New Jersey.
Okay, so you're right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I have never met Meryl and Sharon in person.
Oh.
Yeah, because I had not started doing this until the pandemic was already going on.
Yeah.
But my husband, who has also been out of work, he has met Meryl
Mhm.
in the past. So,
Mhm.
but he's not participating in this right now.
Well, it sounds like she's putting together a really good slate of speakers and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
and she's trying to really mix it up by bringing people in from other places. The woman who she has coming next week is a colleague of mine who lives I think she lives in Kentucky now, but I knew her when she lived up here in the New England area, and her name is Cindy Key, and she's wonderful.
Okay.
Absolutely wonderful. So if you can come back for Cindy's, you'll get a lot of value out of it. She's terrific.
Okay.
Yeah.
I try, you know, it's a
Yeah.
balancing act when you have so many, you know, of the networking meetings. You
Right.
know, you have to,
Well, the beautiful thing about this is that she records these. So if you miss it, you can always try to watch it another time. But you're right. I mean, there really are a lot of really good resources out there for people in terms of looking for work. I think the trick that I find that most people miss is they apply for jobs without realizing that they have to really worry about the applicant tracking systems.
Oh, that's been my nightmare. In the
Well-
beginning, when I didn't realize this was such a challenge,
Yeah.
I did exactly what you just said. If
Oh,
I saw
everyone
something,
does.
I sent it in. And I kept saying, I don't understand. Why am I not even hearing? And as time went by and I learned more and more about this, I've been trying to put ridiculous things in my opinion, that just get me past this system.
Well, let me tell you, and maybe I'll say so. There's a tool that really helps with this.
Job scan.
Yeah. Okay. So
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Been using it lately.
Oh, okay.
But I have to tell you, like, and this is my frustration with it. If you have been doing something for a long time, clearly you're a more senior person, it's asking you for ridiculous skills.
I understand that.
That.
I know, but that's because of the way the job descriptions are written.
I know. I understand that too. But
Yeah.
that's what's so frustrating about
I know.
the tracking system.
I know. I understand. I completely understand. And it's frustrating when you feel qualified and you don't get called. And it's frustrating when you are qualified and you're asked to jump through all these hoops that you realize, you could do with your eyes closed. So it's a very frustrating part of the process, which is why I think networking is so important, because if you can cut through some of that and have more warm
Walk through Thompson Park
and meet people, it feels like a little more of a grown-up process,
Exactly.
Okay, everybody. I think we've got almost everybody back now. So let's go forward, and I'm hoping we can leave some time open at the end for just more free-flowing questions and things, because
Okay, so I don't know how much you have left in your presentation. Officially, the program ends at 11:30, but as long as everyone stays on and you've got the time, then we're good for going over time.
All right, I don't have a lot more.
Okay, good.
So I will understand if people have to pop off, but if people are willing to stick around, I think Meryl, you and I talked about me sticking around for a little bit if people want that.
For sure.
So, okay. So, in terms of talking about, because I think networking is, all about getting information. One of the things that I've noticed, and this with my clients, is that they get through a really good networking conversation with somebody and they forget to ask for introductions at the end. Or they forget to ask if they can keep in touch. Now, it's not to say that they can't go ahead and keep in touch. They can. But I always say, when you're done with a conversation with somebody, ask them, if they haven't already offered, is there anyone else that you would suggest I speak with? Or anything else that you suggest I look into? So it's not even saying, is there anyone you can introduce me to? Because that's sort of comes under the category of, can I pick your brain? I think it's more, what would you suggest? And then if they offer to make the introduction, that's good. In terms of getting information, as you see, I'm suggesting, finding information by industries, by companies, by job functions and roles. I think one of the things that a lot of people are often looking for is information about company culture. There are a few places you can at least get some of that information online. Networking is a great way to just have, less formal conversations with people who are willing to tell you a little bit about what their experience has been working within a particular organization. But I know that there are several sites now that do offer some of that input and feedback. And of course, it's all subjective. There's nothing perfect about it, but many of you are probably familiar with Glassdoor. Indeed is now offering some of that information as well. And there's another site that I really like called The Muse, M-U-S-E. They have nice information about company cultures as well. So, you know, there are a lot of ways, because a lot of times you're not just looking for a job, you're really looking for the right place to plant yourself. The other thing I just want to emphasize is when you are going to meet somebody or talk with them, do your research, prepare ahead of time, check their LinkedIn profile. It's okay if they know that you were looking at them. They are going to appreciate knowing that you came prepared. So get to know as much as you can about them ahead of time. And that also gives you an opportunity to prepare some good, thoughtful questions. So the follow-up and the follow-through, for some reason, it seems like we live in a culture, I'm sure many of you have been on the receiving end of not getting a response, or somebody, even someone telling you that they were going to follow up with you and they don't, or trying to get a hold of somebody who doesn't respond. But you want to be the poster child for following up and following through and being true to your word, because that will have an impact on people. People will remember you for that. It keeps your reputation and your credibility at a high level. It builds trust, and people will be more likely to send referrals your way if they know that you've been responsive to them. So I'm a big believer in that, but it does seem like there's less and less follow-up and follow-through from a lot of people these days. And I've noticed that in the last few years, and I'm not sure why that is, but it's a little disturbing. Okay. So where do you go from here? Well, begin with the end in mind. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? It's more than just getting a job. You know, for most of us, you're trying to create the right life for yourself. The job has to fit in with your life, or you want the job to feel like it's a really positive part of your life. So give yourself a chance to set your mind around that. That's the mindset piece. Envision, what is it that you're really hoping it will look like? That's going to help you form some of the questions in your mind and the questions you might ask people. It's going to help you to get that information you need. And you can never have enough information. I don't care how long you've been out in the workforce, there's always new learning out there. And be flexible with people. You know, if somebody asks, you know, to reschedule something, you're happy to do it, you know, if somebody's doing you a favor, you be as flexible around them as you can be. That's going to get you to where you want to go. And stay connected. Even if you land a job, you don't have to stay connected with everybody you've ever talked to, but follow up with those people who were helpful to you during this process. Let them know you've landed, or next time there's a major holiday, send them a quick note again and say, you know, I just wanted you to know things are going well, or let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. You know, you can come up with some simple language that you can then sort of wash, rinse, and repeat in a thoughtful way. I don't mean to sound insincere, but staying connected with people is really, really important. I've worked with a lot of people who got really embedded in their jobs. They put their heads down, they did their work, and then one day there was no job and they felt really at a loss because they felt like they couldn't reach out to people who they hadn't been in touch with in a long time. I think there's ways around that as well. I think you just have to swallow it and reach out to people. Think about it this way. If somebody you haven't talked to in 10 years reached out to you, wouldn't you be happy to hear from them? Probably. Or you at least would, you know, be cordially happy to hear from them. So, you know, think of it that way. These are some resources that I recommend around networking. These are some books that I think are great. They each address some different aspects of networking, but they're all great resources. I will point out to you this second book here because it sounds kind of funny: Croissants versus Bagels, Strategic Effective and Inclusive Networking at Conferences. This is written by a colleague of mine, Robbie Samuels. It's available on Amazon. He also did a TEDx talk that that relates to what he's talking about in the book. It's a really good book, not just for networking at conferences, but good networking practices in everyday situations. And I mention it because it's just kind of a funny title, and you won't know what he means by that unless you either watch his TEDx talk or read his book. But I did want to share that one with you. Some of these other books are a little better known. So I just wanted to share those helpful resources with you. And again, you can, Meryl said she would be happy to send the PowerPoints to people.
Also, if you save the chat, then you'll have this here too.
Oh.
Oh, no, actually you won't. I'm wrong.
No.
Excuse me.
Okay.
That's wrong. I was thinking the wrong thing.
All right.
Yes, I will share it with people.
So there are a ton of great resources on the web, tons, but there are a few that I really like. Of course, I listed my own podcast. Why wouldn't I, right? But this website at the top here, job-hunt.org, really, really good. It's curated by a woman actually up here in the Massachusetts area, Susan Joyce, and she gets a lot of really great blog writers to write for it. It's really good, current, cutting edge information about all the different nuances and aspects of the job search process. And I think it's just a tremendous resource for people. I've never seen anything quite that comprehensive. And then this other podcast it's called Find Your Dream Job. You can find it through the website maxlist.org. Mac Pritchard is the gentleman who does this podcast. It is one of the best job seeker, career-oriented podcasts I've ever listened to. He is a communications professional. Mac is. He does this really as a labor of love. He's been doing it for way more than 5 years. I've been a guest on his podcast. He's very picky about his guests. He's very particular about how the show gets produced. So I know the quality is top notch. So I highly, highly recommend his podcast. Why he calls it Find Your Dream Job, I'm not exactly sure, because it's a very practical and pragmatic. He really approaches it very practically and pragmatically. And so when I think of Find Your Dream Job, I think of that as going a little bit beyond some of the more practical or pragmatic approaches. But he insists that his guests offer his audience very practical approaches. I would say that my podcast is maybe a little bit more on the inspirational side, but still offering lots of creative ideas and really good real life examples of people who have made a wide variety of career transitions and professional transitions in their lives. And I just have such a good time talking to my guests. I'm going to also show you one other book I just got my hands on, actually, and I'm going to be interviewing. Oh, I already interviewed the author. I don't know if you can see this. It's called The Career Toolkit. And it is by a gentleman named Mark Hirschberg. He's actually based in New York City. Mark is a physicist and an electrical engineer. Why would someone with that background write a career toolkit? Well, you can listen to my interview with him and find out. But I will tell you that with that background and using that background, he put together an amazingly comprehensive, really good resource on careers and for job seekers. It's an excellent, excellent book. And I get a lot of books from people because I interview a lot of authors. This is one of the best I've seen in years. So I recommend this very, very highly. He did not pay me to say that. So in fact, Meryl, you might even get Mark to do one of your sessions.
I wrote it down just in case, because it's all about networking.
Yeah.
I'll use your name.
You can, or I can make the connection. So
there we go.
but I was very impressed with his book. He does a career development program at MIT, even though he's New York based. He has a collaboration he's been doing with MIT for years. And he's just taken a real interest in the people side of things, of people being happy at work, being satisfied with what they're doing and how they navigate their careers. And so even though he's got a very technical side to him, he's also got a very people side to him. So it was really a nice conversation that we've had, and I've been very impressed with his book. So I wanted to share that with you. And I'll just leave this thought with you. This is a quote that came from this gentleman, Carl Buchner, but it's also been credited to Maya Angelou. They may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. I think Maya Angelou's is a little bit different, but it's the same sentiment. And I think that's what I want to leave you with in terms of networking, is that, you know, people worry a lot about what they're going to say and how they're going to say it and how they're showing up and how they're presenting themselves. And they get very self-conscious. And I would say, to you, the best of your ability, try to not fill your head with all those sort of questioning thoughts about yourself, and show up interested, not interesting, and just leave people with a good feeling about you. That's going to make more of an impact than if you just flood them with all of your accomplishments and what you've done. Not to say those things aren't important, but they can get that from your resume. So with that all said,
Okay.
I'm just leaving you with a little contact information. If people would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, I have an extensive network. I'm happy to try to help people make connections. Just put in a note to me that you met me through this forum, and I will definitely accept your invitation. I'd be happy to connect with people.
Okay, so before people start to log off, and I'm definitely going to open it to questions, but people are going to disappear. So first of all, I just want to thank Tammy profusely, and everybody give her a shout out and clap, because none of our speakers get reimbursed from this, and they're happy to volunteer their time. And like I said, Tammy and I got together through a networking contact. So this was terrific. I loved it. I'm hoping everybody else also learned some new things here.
It was great.
So thank you so much.
Great.
And again, just really quickly to repeat that JVS is here to help you if you need some help. If you have any questions about our services or about our one-to-one coaching approach at a very, very, very low cost to you, then reach out to me. My email address, it's all over the place. It's not hard to find me. You can go to our website, and I will be happy to explain what's going on. As I've been putting in the chat room, if you send me an email, mcanner@jvsnj.org, I will send you, as soon as I get it from Tammy, the PowerPoint. But let's open up to a couple of questions. I know one person had posted a while ago and I couldn't even find it, but one of the things that people have when they follow up, they want to know how to not to sound desperate.
Great question.
Tammy, maybe you should unshare the screen just so we can see you.
Okay.
Great. Terrific.
All right. There we go. All right. Yeah. So how to not sound desperate? Well, I think before you even connect with somebody, sort of have a little chat with yourself first. You know, let people know that you're looking for information. If, you know, again, you're asking people for information, you're asking people for suggestions. If, you know, to not, I mean, a big part of not sounding desperate is to really have a little chat with yourself first. Take a few deep breaths and then talk to somebody and get clear, get clear about what it is that you want to learn from this person. So again, if you're sounding desperate, that's because you're focused only on yourself. Take the focus off of yourself. The best thing you can do, it sounds weird, I know, but the best thing you can do is not focus on yourself in your own job search. I know that sounds bizarre, but if you try it, you'll know what I'm talking about. The more that you focus on the other person and what you can learn from them, then you will be able to ask good follow-up questions. What you want to be careful with is not objecting to anything they say, like saying, well, but yeah, but I thought this, or I thought that, or, you know, if you're feeling particularly anxious in the moment, really do some deep breaths. I know that that sounds simple, but a lot of people don't do that. They forget to breathe. People forget to breathe.
All right, there's probably more questions, but we want to make this a little interactive. So if someone has a particular question, as I'm searching the chat box, if they want to unmute themselves and ask Tammy directly, they can. Does anyone have a particular question you want to ask?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Natalie.
Thank you, Tammy, for the great presentation. Question for you, and that's what I've heard from other career coaches. Sometimes you need to educate your contacts on how they can help you, because people who've been in transition themselves, they ultimately know know about this experience and how they can help. But those who haven't, they're lost when they get on a call with me, let's say, and they don't know what I'm expecting from them. How do you address it?
Well, I think what you need to do is give them a fairly quick outline of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You know, I guess I'm big on the kind of language we use around that. So you want to say, I'm looking for a situation or a role where I can use these skills, these strengths. I'm interested, or if you're interested in a particular industry. So if they don't say to you, how can I help you? Although I would think most people would, you know, you could say, well, here are some of the pieces of information that I'm looking for. I'm wondering if you're familiar with any of this, or if you know anybody else who you think might be able to offer some of this information. So what I tend to do is to talk about the job search as if it's a research project. Not to say that I'm not telling you not to pretend you're not looking for a job. I mean, of course, but I think that people, if they don't know how to help you, you have to give them enough information so that they can at least answer you. So it could be a question like, well, I'm hoping to talk to people who have been engaged in this industry or that industry, or maybe there's a specific company you're interested in, or I'm looking to talk to other people who are in my field. Here's a little bit about the kinds of things I've done. Do you know anybody like that who you think I could talk to? Or are you familiar with anything in the area? Or, you know, so you really want to give them enough information so that they have something to reference.
Good. Another question somebody else has?
I have one.
Okay.
Okay, so, and I mentioned this somewhere in the chat, there is such a wealth of information, of tips, of books, of podcasts, of et cetera,
right,
that, I mean, I can easily get really immersed in all of that and then not be doing the job search. So what kind of tips do you have for how to and also how to manage the information, right?
Yeah.
So like I keep coming up with different ways to manage the list, but then I don't get to everything on the list, and then the stuff is stale. So should I just delete it and start over? And yeah, I would love you to speak to that.
So you're asking kind of two questions. It sounds like, how do you manage the influx of all the information that we can access now and not get kind of swallowed up by it? Mm-hmm. And then how do you create a good system for both tracking, I think, the information and the people that you're trying to, you know, you're trying to track information. You're also trying to track connections and people.
Correct.
So I'm going to answer the first part of it first, to have a system. So anybody here have a system that they use that works well for?
I mean, I'm trying to use Evernote for it.
Okay, well, I've heard that some people find that very useful. Some people use spreadsheets. Some people use.
I'll get buried.
All right, but I'm talking in general that some people find that useful. Some people will segment their spreadsheets into different tabs too, and that might be very helpful. Naomi just mentioned Trello as a really good project management tool that I've used for some other. I actually use it for my podcast, and I'm working on a book now. I'm using it for that. So Trello is great. if you're familiar with it, Trello.
Yeah, I am.
And then some people will use like a CRM, a customer relationship management system, if they're trying to manage all of their contacts. I say you have to use what works for you. I'll tell you the other system
But
that's
not just the contacts. I mean, like Glassdoor's got these articles I want to read, and then there's this new job hunt thing that we're talking about in your podcast.
Yes. Yes, I was getting to that. So
okay.
Maybe I'm a little long-winded. I don't know. But the other system that I use, or that some people use, is a 3-ring binder. And so if you're a paper person, which some of us are, you can divide things up into sections of a 3-ring binder. Now you can also create that kind of categorization on your computer. I would say that when it comes to things like articles on Glassdoor, things like that, I would probably download them into some kind of a Google folder, and then, give yourself a deadline by which you're either going to read them or get rid of them. Because honestly, a lot of those articles, there's going to be new articles that keep coming.
Right. I think that I like give yourself a deadline, either read them or chuck them. That's good.
You can read them or chuck them. You can also think about what your key questions are. There's a ton of stuff out there that would be useful to everybody, but you do have to really make choices. You just have to. And so it's a matter of how many hours are in the day. What do you have the most energy for? The other piece I wanted to address with this is that there are certain times of the day when we are at our most productive, or our analytical minds work the best. And there are other times of the day when we're a little more tired and or we're not as focused, but we can handle maybe more administrative or administrivia type tasks. So if you have a good system going for your outreach, let's say you have maybe a few different templates that you use for emails to reach out to people. Maybe you say, so that doesn't take as much thought. Maybe you save that for that time of the day. Everyone has their time of day that works well for them in terms of when they're productive. Some of us are more, I say us, it's not me. Some of us are more morning people. Some are more night owls. If anyone here is familiar with Daniel Pink's books, Dan Pink, he wrote a book called When, and he looked at all the research on timing of all kinds of things, and he talks a lot about this there. It's a really interesting book because you don't have enough to do already, but really a great book. And I actually went to hear him speak about it. I happen to be a big fan of his, and I like a lot of, he also wrote a great book called Drive, which is all about motivation. And when you really start to understand what motivates you, what truly motivates you, that helps you to keep your energy up. It helps you to stay alert. It helps you to stay on top of what you're trying to do.
That's true. That's true. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay,
that was the long answer.
Tammy's been great and giving us a lot of extra time. How about we open up one more question? Does anybody else have a question?
I have a question.
Go right ahead, Shira.
Okay, so this is asking for a friend. Let's say my question is really about networking on the back end of a company, because I think part of the problem, the big obstacle, is so many people are applying and looking for jobs.
Yeah.
So how do I get my resume to stand out? By working the internal, finding staff people at that company.
Right.
Who should I be targeting, and how do you suggest I make those introductions? What am I asking of them when I know there's a particular job I want?
Right. Well, actually,
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of people appreciate when you have a specific job in mind if you're trying to do the networking through the company. So I'll start at the beginning. The first thing is, take a look at LinkedIn, type in the name of the company in LinkedIn and see if you are at all connected to anyone who works there. You may not be directly connected, but you might have second-degree connections of people who are in your network who happen to be connected. I don't want to say they know them, but they might be connected to them on LinkedIn. And so that's a first place that I start. Is to really explore the connections through LinkedIn. And I try more than one. If I have more than one connection in a company, depending on the nature of I mean, like sometimes I have direct connections to the CEO of a company. I'm not going to tell my clients to go, knock on the door of the CEO. That's not the person you really want to talk to, unless it's a really small company, because they're not the people who are really going to be available to you, right? So, but really, to the best of your ability, try to get a foot in the door just to talk to someone who works there. And then from there, you can ask them, you can say, look, I found a job at your company I'd like to apply for. Can you give me any advice on how to put my best foot forward in terms of applying for a position in your company? A lot of companies have these, employee referral systems where employees get credit or maybe even cash if you get hired and stay on for a period of time. So there's incentives to refer you in. So in companies where that's the case, there's going to be a lot of people who would be happy to help you out with your application, because if you get hired and you stick around, they're going to get something out of, sometimes thousands of dollars. So it can be very lucrative. But barring that, your best bet is to do everything you can to try to find somebody who works there. So if it's not through direct or second degree connections on LinkedIn, the other place that I suggest that people look is check your alumni networks. Perhaps there's somebody that went to the same school you went to who happens to work there. Or maybe they work for that company, but they work for that company in another city. That's fine too. Just whatever it takes to make any kind of a warm-ish connection with somebody inside the company. Now, if you have your choice of people, then a good way to really, make sure that you get a foot in the door is, you might have a number of people. You try to look for maybe somebody whose job is somewhat closely related in some way to the job you're applying for. So if you're looking for an IT job, you might not necessarily be looking to talk to somebody in marketing and sales. But again, if somebody's been with the company a long time, or let's say 5+ years, they might know a lot of people in the company already. So don't make assumptions about who knows who. Like, that's the other thing I can't say enough is be wary of your assumptions and how they guide you or get in your way. Okay.
All right.
Tammy, this is Leonard. I have one question. Can I go? Tammy, how do you make the transition? I worked in South America, in particular Brazil, and I ran 49 countries from Central America down to South America. And what's happening with me is that when I talk to people, people say that you've done more than most presidents have done in U.S. companies.
Yeah.
And you've increased revenue probably, most CEOs have not had your global experience. So I always get hit with, you have too much
You're
experience.
overqualified. Is that what they're telling you?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
But you just can't seem to get in front of the right people because, I think the people that you talk to, I try not to put them on the spot.
Right.
Because, I don't want them to think that they have to deliver something, but I always run into the situation where, hey, like I told I told a recruiter, I said, I just decided to work outside of the U.S. because I was hitting the glass ceiling working in corporate America in the U.S. So I went abroad. Exxon Mobil, AT&T, but it seems like most of the people I come across, they say it's interesting, but they can't help you.
Okay.
How do you get around that?
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind. One is when someone kind of starts to put that wall up, or let's say I say crank the window up. Now I'm aging myself, right? Put your hands on the window and say, wait, one more thing.
Right.
Wait a minute, and say, okay, I understand you can't help me. Would you have any other suggestions of somebody else I can talk to or someplace else I can look?
Yeah,
or What,
You know,
or
I've
what
done that
would
on a number of occasions.
what would you recommend to me? Because I seem to be getting this feedback on a regular basis. So, you know, I also tell people, look, there are many versions of the truth. I don't never tell people to lie, but let's say there's something on your resume that seems to be getting in the way. And you can either, you know, you can tweak it, or let's say there's something that you've done in the past that you don't want to do anymore. You know, like,
Yeah, take it off.
Take it off your resume. You don't have to put everything you've ever done on your resume. So if there's something that's really, I'm not saying to be dishonest, but you can still be honest, but you don't have to tell them everything. So clearly there's a perception that's being created that you might even be a threat to a CEO or something. So, you know, you've got to be able to let them know that you have this experience, you'd like to continue to do this work, and you know, and you have to, and I think, you know, you will find someone who will say to you, yeah, here's some things I think you should do to get around that.
Yeah. Because I've talked to like a couple multinational corporations and they were interested, but then when COVID hit, everything just went out the door. So, I mean, that's the challenge where, you know, I'm always kind of experiencing that. And then when I get a chance to talk to someone that's in the C-suite or someone that's at the, what do you call it? The influencer level.
Yeah.
You know, because I talked to the CFO. I sent my resume to the CFO of Walmart. And the only reason why he looked at my resume, he told me, was because I had a graph showing where I went from $41 million or $24 million to like $147 million. And he said, that's the only reason why he looked at the graph. And he said, everybody's resume says the same thing.
Right. So, you know, I think you have to be, like I talked about at the beginning, you have to be open and curious. So be curious when you get those answers. Don't let it be a wall. So, you know, that makes me really curious, and ask more questions about that. I know we have to wrap up in a minute. I did see one more question about references and how to get them. So first of all, obviously the first line is to get your references from people that have either supervised you or worked alongside you. If that's not an option, I mean, a lot of people don't want to give references if they're currently employed, right? Because they don't want their employer to know they're looking. But the best way to get references is to reach out to people who you believe have a good understanding of you and your work and your working style, and can comment on that. And then when you offer up a list of references to the potential employer, you have to explain what your relationship is with this person and how you've worked together in some way or another, and be able to explain that. I will tell you, I've seen more and more lately, and it shocks me. In the last month and a half, I've had 5 clients get jobs. So I don't know why everyone's saying the job market stinks, because I can't begin to tell you, and the industries that they've gotten jobs in, I was shocked by. Even I was shocked by it. So there's a where there's a will, there's a way. But you know what else is really interesting? I think only 1 or 2 of them out of those 5 had their references checked. A lot of employers are not even checking references. I think they're finding other ways to find out about you, or they're assuming that, of course, you're going to give names of people who are going to say nice things about you. So I think some employers are just skipping it, and they're trusting either their own judgment, or they're sleuthing and checking you out in some other way. But I've been surprised. I used to see it as a red flag when an employer didn't check your references. I used to think, wow, they don't have their act together. But now I'm seeing a lot more of it. I'm hearing a lot of employers saying, we don't even bother with the references anymore because we know we're going to get mostly positive stuff. So it doesn't really help us in making a hiring decision. Okay. So I say, put your best foot forward with your references and educate them on the role and what you think they might be, the company might be interested in about you, so that your references can put a good light on those things about you.
All right, Tammy, you have gone above and beyond the call of duty. The program was supposed to end 35 minutes ago, so I'm going to stop it and say thank you, thank you, thank you again. And to everybody who's still on the call, and there's still 35 people on the call, thank you for being here, and keep looking in your email box because there'll be a program in 2 weeks. We've got another great program coming up. And hopefully, and as Tammy said, I had a client who got a job offer Christmas Eve on the spot from an interview. So much for those rumors about no one who gets hired between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
That is not true.
I know. And I have a whole bunch of clients who had a lot of interviews in December, and I know the companies slowed down and they went on vacation, but I'm really hoping things are going to pick up, and some who just got interviews the last 2 days. So just got to be methodical, got to do it well, be happy, smile, and it's going to work for all of you. So I wish you all a great week. Everybody stay healthy. Everybody stay warm and dry, depending on where you are, because I know now we're all over the place. Not necessarily in New Jersey. And hopefully I won't see you in 2 weeks because you'll all have landed. So if you do land, please share.
You have Cindy Key is coming in 2 weeks. Is that right?
She is. Absolutely. That's right.
So
So,
I can't say enough great things about Cindy Key. She's an old friend, an old colleague of mine from New England. She now lives in another state. She's fabulous. So just a delightful human being on top of being a fabulous career person. So come back and meet her.
It's all about networking. It's all about networking. You got both of them from the same person, and just go out there and have a great day, and we'll see you next week, or let me know why I don't in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Leonard Sloan. All right, hey, okay.
I didn't know if we were going to hear Leonard's conversation or if he was.
Well,
I automatically get the invitation, or
yes, if you register for this program, that gets we have a separate email list and constant contact. It's called the seminar list, and next time all the flyers go out to the people who. So anyone who's been, we won't use those emails for other things, those addresses, but we do use it just to keep people informed about our next program. But unfortunately, sometimes they go into spam or junk. So if you got it this time, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you haven't gotten it, then you don't see it, always you can reach out to me and I'll let you know when the next program is. All right.
What's the topic?
Good. I'm glad you asked me that because I don't remember. Sorry, because I'm already working on the speaker for the February program. So
just come, right? That's it. Just come.
Excuse me.
I said, you can say everyone, just come.
Just come. Yeah.
Come and you'll find out. Surprise.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. Take care, everybody. I normally end the meeting, but you're in control, Tammy. So you can
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. All right. Well, goodbye, everybody. Or so long. I'll say so long. I don't like saying goodbye. Best wishes to everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.